Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. In today's video, I'm going to reveal my big secret for this piggy bank horsepower challenge. I might get a lot of hate for it, but before you cast judgment, hear me out. Now remember, in the piggy bank horsepower challenge, you all decide the winner. While some people are heavily focused on the dollar per horsepower ratio, or they're going after like a really cool type of engine swap with their build, I'm more focused on like the complete total package. I wanted to build something that I could be really proud of, that would have good street credibility, and that would not break the bank, right? I want to make a lot of power, of course. Now, the challenge rules are we have to calculate the entire cost of the build, right? This is my Mopar 400 block. It's the cold weather block, which I have a whole video about the history and background on these engines. Some people call them the mega block. But essentially, they've got some super thick mains and are really sought after for strokers. Now, I've already had this machined. I had all this done 3 years ago. So to comply with the challenge, I had to call the same shop and ask what their prices were for today. And this is what I've got so far done to the block and what I've got as a cost so far in this challenge. Now, if you notice, the block looks nice and clean. That's because I had them hot tank and MagnaFlex it. It's something that I typically always do when I have a block sent to the machine shop. For one, you don't want to deal with a nasty, grimy block, so you want to clean it. And then you don't want to invest any kind of time or money into a block if it's got a crack or some critical fault. So hot tank and MagnaFlex, that cost me $200, $100 each. So far I'm already 200 bucks into the build. Now, I had these cylinders bored out. They had a small tiny ridge originally, which really wasn't that big of a deal, but I knew I wanted to bore it out anyways. So I bored these 33 over to a 4.375 inch bore. I also had them honed, of course. Now the bore and hone for all 8 cylinders was $350 towards this build. So far I'm already $550 into it, and I'm not done. While they had it, I also had them install new cam bearings. It's a lot easier for them to do it with their tool than me. And I also had them put in new freeze plugs. Now, if you look at Johnny Mopar's latest video, he talks about freeze plugs and he advises you to get the deep ones. That's what these are. These are the deeper plugs, and I 100% agree with them. You don't want to get the shallow ones, as they have a tendency to kind of wiggle their way out. As the block heats up, it expands and contracts. And so you can have issues with them weeping or falling out. So get the deep ones and you won't regret it. The freeze plugs and the cam bearings cost me another 100 bucks. So as the block sits right now, I'm already $650 into the short block, which is actually not too bad, especially for San Diego. So I wouldn't always advise to go with like the cheapest machine shop. You want to go with the machine shop you trust first and foremost. It's definitely important. So I'm happy with the block right now. 650 is not too bad. Let's get into what I'm actually doing with this challenge. Now, if you noticed already, I do have some casting marks here. I'm going to clean a little bit of this up. I'll clean up these passages a little bit. I'll keep a vacuum on it so I don't throw dust all over the new bearings, and I'll make sure it's cleaned before I start reassembly. What am I going to put into this? Well, I'm going to start off with the rods. I'm not using factory components. I bought some Scat I-beam forged rods. I really wanted this to be a fully forged rotating assembly, so I'll spill the beans on that already. Forged crank, forged pistons. Is it expensive? Yes, but you can do it cheaper than the kits you see online. If you're searching for a stroker kit, you're most likely going to come across 440 Source. I've used their stuff in the past and I've been really happy with it. But when you look at the price today, they're $2,700. Yes, it does come with all the components really needed and it's balanced, but it's still really expensive. And when you add shipping and tax, it's easily at $3,000. So these connecting rods were $422 from Summit. Take a look right here. They are 6.7 inches long. And I do like Scat. I've used them a few times in other builds. I really like the quality of product they make. If I could get this rod out, it's difficult one-handed. They're lightweight, especially being an I-beam. I'm not concerned about these. In fact, I'm really happy. These are going to be able to last, a long time. They're going to handle all the power that I want to push with this. I think these are rated for like up to 700 horsepower. So I'm not too concerned about that. I don't think I'm going to get that close. But I'm pretty stoked about that. It was a good purchase. These actually were purchased with YouTube money. The channel's been monetized for about a year now, and I've made almost 600 bucks. So thank you so much. Couldn't have done this without all of you supporting the channel, watching the videos. You paid for these rods, and I'm extremely grateful. So thank you. Let's jump into the Pistons. Now, there aren't a whole lot of options for Pistons nowadays. At least on Summit and Jegs, you've only got like maybe 4 brands. These are Icons, which I've used Icons in the past, and I really do like them. So if you look here, this is, you can ignore these facts actually, but one thing that I will show is that the pin is a popular Chevy size, which just makes it easier for off-the-shelf parts. Those rods, didn't mention, those are the 0.99 on the small end, but the big end is actually 2.2, and I'll get into that a little bit more. But here are the Pistons. I mentioned they were forged units. These are stroker pistons that were not cheap. These with the rings were $974, which I know that's actually some people's budget for the entire short block in this challenge. I decided to put a lot of my money for the build into the bottom end. I don't want to have to come back and touch this. You know, I can go a little bit cheaper on the top end, but I wanted a strong bottom end. So here are the Pistons. It's so nice opening up brand new parts. It's like Christmas for a grown man. Here we go. I got the size, and I was real particular about the lip right there for the oil ring. I didn't want the pin to go too much into it. These have a compression height of 1.485, which is critical for the cubic inch build plan that I've got. So now that you've seen the rods and the pistons, let's jump into the crankshaft. Here is the secret to most of my master plan. This is the crankshaft. It's already been machined. It's ready to be installed. You can see it's kind of old, of course. This is a 383 forged crank. So yes, it's the same size, same stroke and all that, but I modified it slightly. I say I as in the machine shop. I had the shop grind down the rod journals. You can kind of see some of the machining here to 2.2. So it took them down just a little bit. Now, this is a popular mod when people are building a 470, when they use a 440 crank. I didn't want to do that, and let me explain why. In the background video I posted on this block about a year ago now, I called it the 426 Hemi Killer. So I'm a big nostalgia guy. I like the idea of a 426. And to kind of put my money where my mouth was at with this, I know a lot of you don't like the 400s or talk trash on them. They were a smog engine, but I believe in these engines. When you put them together and you build them with the components that Mopar should have used back in the day, these are monsters. So that crankshaft, with the rod journals being offset ground to 2.2, brings that stroke to 3.545. Let me break down the numbers for you. So Summit Racing has this really cool compression calculator. It gives us all the info we need. If I go over to the bore section, we know the bore is 4.375, right? 33 over. The stroke with that offset grind brings us to 3.545. And I'm not really sure what I'm doing with the cylinder head yet, but we've got to put figures in here for the calculator. So I'll put 88 as that's a stock head. Don't worry, I'm not going to have an 88cc head. I'll do something to it. The pistons, they have a slight dish. They're 4.5 cc's. Now the deck height, it's a 9.98 from the factory, right? With the rods and the compression height we have, we're left with 0.022. So just barely in the hole, but really close to flat. I'm going to use a thin gasket for this, so 0.03 is what I'll use. And obviously this has got 8 cylinders. Now after all that, we're left with 426 cubic inches. Now you can ignore that compression ratio up there. That's if I just put some stock heads on there. I've got no idea what I'm doing for the top end yet. That's to be determined. Now the crankshaft itself, all the machine work, and the bearings needed for this cost me $384. Now for the same price, I could have built a 451, which is a great combination, I know. And for a couple $100 more, I could have done the 470, and it would have made a ton of power. But I wanted to be different, and I wanted to test a theory. Now we Mopar people, we thrive on being different. I don't know if anyone's done this to a 400. I haven't been able to find anything online about it, reviews or anything. What I really wanted to check with this is I wanted to see how the concept of rod ratio really affected an engine. So the 6.7 inch rod connected to that, or compared to that 3.545 stroke, gives me a rod ratio of 1.89. It's a fairly long rod ratio. Should have a lot more time at top dead center, piston dwell time is what they call it, which theoretically should make some more power than the short rod ratio at high RPM. So I wanted to test this. I think I'm not going to have an issue breaching 500 horsepower. I'll get into the cam here in just a sec, so don't crucify me. Let's check this out. I think a 426 based 400 is going to be a monster on the street, and I'm hoping it lasts a very long time. You don't see strokers with 100,000 miles. I don't think this should have an issue doing that. Let's get into the cam. Now, over the past like 5 to 10 years even, there's been a lot of debate on cam quality, cam and lifter quality. I know there's been a lot of videos pushed just recently too about camshafts failing. Johnny Mopar pushed one out, Uncle Tony's Garage pushed one out. So luckily, I think I was able to circumnavigate a lot of that. Check out my cam. Now, I picked this off Facebook for 50 bucks. This is a Mopar purple shaft. If you can kind of see this, I'm not sure if you can read it or not. It's a 474 cam. Now, I'll show you the cam card here in a second. I had to go online to pull it up because it's too faded. But this cam was used in a dyno session, so I've been told, but it doesn't have hardly any wear on it. Now, Summer Racing still has the cam on their website, but it's not available anymore. My cam's actually from 1990. If we look at the specs on the camshaft, one of the first things that'll jump out to you is it's rated for 2,000 to 6,000 RPM. I mentioned I wanted to operate on a higher RPM basis. If we scroll down, you'll see that it's a 0.474 lift, both intake and exhaust. And one of the coolest things about this is it's operating on a 110 degree lobe separation. So it should have a pretty cool exhaust note. Now, I just gave you a bunch of information on the build and a lot of pricing. I still have a couple more expenses left, and then I'll be able to assemble the entire short block. That's going to be my next video for this challenge. The short block is getting completely assembled. I'm going to finish stage 1 of this competition. Now, I asked you all on a YouTube survey what you thought a good budget was for a big block that made 500 horsepower, that was a good budget build, and was also something you could still be proud of. And you all agreed that 5,000 was the average. So that's my goal. I think I'm going to get this complete engine, long block, built for 5,000. I'll give you the stage 1 numbers as soon as I get it built in the next video. Thanks for watching the video, everyone. If you're not already, please hit that subscribe button. This 426 is going to breathe fire here real soon. I'm really excited.